This is called to Unmothered on Mother's Day. Healing is possible, but grieving is necessary. And I wrote this on May 14th, 2023. Things with my mom have been less than stellar over the years, and she's always urging me to talk about it. I never want to because we are in such a peaceful place that it feels disingenuous. She continues to remind me that this healing isn't easy and more people can learn from it. So I'm writing this for her and us and all of you. We were estranged for some time after a long childhood of roller coastering emotions. Some days she was my best friend and discipline was on the back burner. And some days it was about just as toxic as you could imagine, sparing you the details. When I explained parentification to her a couple of weeks ago, she said, "Oh, yeah, I did that. Sink or swim, baby." I remember her being upset when I got dressed for picture day in 7th grade. And she realized at 7 a.m. that my belly was showing. I had picked the cutest Christina Aguilera-esque pink and burgundy striped blouse. And it only buttoned to right above the navel. And it was sheer. She dragged me to that mall when it opened at 8 a.m., fussing relentlessly, which was confusing for me because she was there when I tried it on a few weeks prior. I remember another day. The yelling was about me informing her at the last minute that I had a poster board for a project. How many of you have done that? I specifically told her about this a million times as I created the words for said poster board. Confusion again. What I didn't realize was my mom was tired and distracted when I was young, as I popped up when she was 34 and at the height of her career. My parents co-parented well. They're actually happily together now, married 37 years and counting. Of course, now it's 38 years. But she was still just as overstimulated as I found myself a couple years ago when my husband was all work and I was all kids. When he was all work, I was all dinner, all Band-Aids on boo-boos, all taxi service, and the rest of the junk moms around the U.S. asked to be free of on Mother's Day. So I get it. In a way I never did before. I'm someone who can truly say my mother did her best. But that is not the case for everyone. So I want to talk about the dark days when I felt unmothered and how I made it through. Unmothered is not a state. It is a feeling. She calls, but she doesn't listen. She listens, but she doesn't understand. She sends gifts, but they don't fit. She remembers, but from her perspective. She holds your hand with a ledger in the other of what she's done for you. She's a witness to your story as long as she's the main character. She's on the front row, as long as your spotlight hits her, too. Welcome to the Unmothered Club. It almost feels motherless, doesn't it? Caveat that my mom wants me to tell you that this is a blend of other mothers who I remember. And it is. Adulthood likely thrusts you into a space where you notice this through the journey of others, which is where I collected all these things about mothers too. You see the long Mother's Day posts on these ladies that you thought were on Hallmark only. You date someone whose mama calls you their child. You hang with your friends around their parents and are nervous because it's so peaceful. Yep, you're unmothered. And that adult realization usually is followed by grieving. And that grief is hard, but it's so real. I have to tell you, you have to call it what it is to wade through it. When I was in my counseling training during seminary, we read this book by Melissa and Kelly called Grief, Contemporary Theory and the Practice of Ministry. And it talks about grief as a mosaic. It's the little pieces of what was seemingly a perfect thing that creates a new image. Her point was that when we grieve, we put the pieces together to create a new thing entirely. It will never look like it did before. From my own reflection, I realized that we often can't grieve because we're looking to go back to how it was just the moment before. But that moment, that world, even that us, no longer exists. I also often think about how in our mind, that glass was flawless before it shattered, right? There was never a perfect glass. It was just whole. And that is the beauty of the mosaic. We can always be whole again. In perfect pieces in a perfect design. A masterpiece while being constructed. The key to starting to grieve is to let go of the idea that it'll look one way in particular. It is often a messy process that goes in waves and cycles. Building the new thing from the old pieces. And throw away the ones that keep cutting you. Throw away the ones that don't make sense in this new design. Keep the ones that are a mirror to who you are today, right now. Our estrangement tested all that I had learned. The first month or so after she stopped talking to me, my son was, it says 6 months, but he was like 16 months probably. And I was renting a room in a house for spiritual artists. I suffered blow after blow that ended with me completely unable to afford to renew my lease. So I lost my apartment. Stability for my child was what I craved the most as I was writing a new motherhood story. And it seemed like I had failed in every way. Even though my son was cared for, comforted, seen, heard, all I wanted was what I perceived I never had. To feel steady. Feel steady. My childhood wish list was to 1, be the child, not the adult. And to 2, know I can fall apart as children do. I barely understood the world and it felt like it somehow depended on me. And so I was up all night for weeks thinking about all the awful things I said to my mom in anger, all the darkness I spoke over her life. My words and their power tormented me. Would she ever be my best friend again? On a certain sleepless night, I went to the kitchen to meet my roommate for a 3 a.m. lesson of how to make Rice Krispies from scratch. You need butter and marshmallows and Rice Krispies, and you just microwave it. It's amazing. Fortunately for all of us, her insomnia resulted in baked goods. I went on and on and on about how I was feeling and how my mom must be feeling until I was sobbing. And then I looked up from the counter and my roommate was laughing. Not a hearty chuckle, but one of those quieter rumbles like, like that. She had been in foster care since she was young and she was her own mom most days. I said, why the fuck are you laughing? She said, because that's always going to be your mama. But you were always going to be the child. The moment you accept that you are not, in fact, her mom is the moment you're going to stop feeling responsible for how she turns out. Then you, yourself, will heal. You're not raising her, you are raising you. And she smiled. And I smiled. And went on my journey and waited for my mom to call. And she did. She did. About 6 months later, on accident, she FaceTimed me. How do you accidentally FaceTime someone? So I let her talk to my son for a bit. He was only babbling and using sign language at that point. And it worked. We went on like that for many months, actually. Periodically, she would ask my son, how's mommy's business going? Or whatever else she wanted to check in on. We talked through my oblivious toddler until we mustered up the energy to talk to each other directly. I would preach about it from the pulpit and then tell her about it later. I would speak my piece when we both had our gloves off. I would drop by unannounced when I was in town. She rolled her eyes, but she listened. She dismissed it, but she listened. That is one key I wish someone would have told me sooner. Speak your truth, regardless if they accept it or not. But speak it also in places where you will be seen and heard. Some mothers will not mother, and that will be a part of the journey to decide how you move forward. Keep watering beds of stones or find new pastures with new mothers. I bet if you look around, you will find many who mother just waiting for you. That is what I did in the meantime, and it gave me the strength to mother my own. One day, a couple years later, I called her, completely empty inside on my lunch break, as I was running my business full time and working on a COVID contract full time for the CDC Foundation. My husband was working overnight and then watching the kids for me, half asleep during the day. Every time we talked to a mortgage lender, they moved the barometer. Pandemic was raging, and my mom has worked in pandemics for 20 years, so she knew just how I felt. I was over everything. I called her and I said, hey, I never realized how much you felt like a single mom. And Lord, are we not supposed to say that? Do y'all remember how they jumped down Michelle Obama's throat when they said it? Look it up. My mom asked, what's gotten into you today? I told her how short I was with the kids and how overstimulated I felt, that they were technically alive in the house, but my husband was worn out from working, dozing on and off, and I still had so much to do on my own. Today, I was so snappy with the kids that I did not recognize myself. She said, I thought you hated me, which immediately turned on my tears. Hated you? I loved you. I just wanted more of you and the best of you, and I hated what I got. Now that I'm in your shoes, I know you gave me all you had. And I got as close to a thug tear as I will ever get from my mom. And she sighed and nodded. Thank you. And when I read this to her, I got super close to another. But she said, not today. Perfect gifts started rolling in. She was sending things to my kids and my husband. Yes, she adopted him as a son, just like I saw at my friends' cookouts and stuff with their boyfriends. The calls started rolling in with undivided attention, and the visits got planned months in advance. And my mother mothered. More so, I felt mothered. This is a unique outcome, and I wouldn't be searching for it if I were you, perhaps. But let me tell you what I also came to know from my dear moon sister, who was pregnant alongside me and lost her mother some years back. We love the moon together. That's why I call her that. My mother mothered before she knew me, as she carried me in her womb from the day she was born. Through hurt, through loss, through promotions, through heartbreak, to the top of hills, to the lows of arid valleys, she carried me. My grandmother carried her as she carried me, through sharecropping, through migration, through being married at 13, through countryside, through slick city streets. I was there as I was a little seed inside my mom, inside my grandmom, from the earliest days of her creation. Did you know that? Baby girls are born with all their eggs. Watching my mom and me heal through my sons and my daughter was cold water on a summer day as I taste all the ways that she mothered. I am a married, healing healer, young, gifted, and Black. I am independent, driven, focused, courageous, unmovable, and thoughtful, just like her. I am my mother's child. I write this as I rub my stomach, thinking about the fruit of my own womb. If I am carrying a little girl, I too am carrying my daughter inside of me and her sons and daughter inside of her as we travel through healing and blessing and knowing and seeing. My mother mothered me, but I couldn't see her. I see her clearly now. And I pray that my babies and my babies' babies see me too. I am Crystal, daughter of Rose, daughter of Sarah, mother to many, and I'm wishing you well on this Mother's Day. May you feel mothered by the multitudes of those who mother. And because I wrote this a year ago, I now know. I am Crystal, daughter of Rose, daughter of Sarah, mother of a baby girl, Giannina, who has my grandkids as well. Mother to many, and I'm wishing you well on this Mother's Day. May you feel mothered by the multitudes of those who mother, and may you be well. Amen, Ashe, and may it be so.